One of the things that I have seen where these groups have come together to make the greatest impacts, and where they're going to need to do it more, is on the human side of the equation. And there we see these once natural occurring events that have been grossly exacerbated by climate change and the warming of the climate. Things such as annual red tide is what we have now. There seems to be no break in it. And hurricanes and repetitive flooding, all of these disasters that are now greater because of human-induced climate change are dramatically, disproportionately impacting the low-wage earners. So they were first harmed by red tide. They barely got back on their feet, and then they're slammed by a hurricane. And then along comes the housing market. And so we tend to blame it all on the housing market, but it's not. These families were already weakened by the impacts of climate change. Most meaningful to me right now is demonstrating the necessity of making these adaptation and these mitigation changes, because we're at one of those points in history where something used to be a far-fetched idea, and then it became somewhat something that we talked about, but we haven't got to the point yet where it's a necessity. So I think education is going to play a very large role in that. And I look to my role and the role of others in creating a demonstration project on the 53 acres of the Sarasota downtown bayfront. So there we had a situation where we had public facilities that were in harm's way. In fact, the most vulnerable structure in all of the city of Sarasota was located at that location. We had a hardened shoreline, which made the coastline very vulnerable to sea level rise and storm surge. So what the Bay has done is they have retreated. They're moving the public facilities landward, away from the rising seas. They're taking out the hardened shoreline and putting in softened shoreline so that as the sea level rises increase, the habitats can migrate both forward and backwards. And they're also creating these water quality improvements that are going to, for the first time, filter the nitrogen that is fueling the red tides. First time it's going to be filtered in over 100 years. Is going to be a byproduct of this one single initiative. So my hope is that when policymakers, government officials, the public, and developers themselves see that property values can actually appreciate by representing the landscapes to those that adapt to climate change, that for me would be a big victory. So this community has already started, but we need to continue this trend of focusing on nutrient management. As a community, we can have an impact on global climate change, but only a small impact. However, as a community, we can have a large impact on the feeding of these red tides by reducing these anthropogenic nutrients, these nitrogens that are fueling that system. So I think that's the first thing. And the second thing, again, hearkening back to this human side of the equation, we need to be looking very seriously at these lower income communities and hardening these homes and creating areas where those that are impacted by especially hurricanes can safely retreat to in the time of an emergency. We often think of the very large coastal residents as being at risk, and they are. However, the majority of the owners can afford to get out early. They can afford to rebuild. They have insurance policies. Those properties, those low-lying properties that are occupied by our service workforce, those working at our minimum wage, have none of those alternatives available to them. So we need to be assisting them by hardening their homes and providing for them safe sheltering opportunities that are very close to their residents.